I am Brad Keelor. He is Mike Gomez. Coming up next on Director's Cut, find out why some people might say he has a radioactive personality. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, except at the holidays and during the summer, I sit down with a different GI member who has all kinds of stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some are professional. You know the deal, viewers. All of them are fun. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, new year, make a resolution to learn a little bit more about GI, head over to geoinstitute.org after you watch this today, and there you will find out so many things, including that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. If you like what you see today, and you will, I will just tell you bluntly, you will enjoy it. It will be forced, but it will be fun. You should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. This is, of course, our first show of 2025, season 6, somehow, unbelievably, with a real guest, since last week was the best of 2024, and coming to us all the way from the west coast of America, where it's 3 hours earlier than it is where I am in the palatial Keelor Estate in Northern Virginia. He's a faculty member at the University of Washington, UW, as the kids call it. It's Mike Gomez. Mike, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Brad. Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
We're going to have a good time today. We have 10 questions, the same way that we do every single week, and 2 of them are the same. Just like every single week, we have to start with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Sure. So at the University of Washington, I think I get to be a variety of different things, right? I get to be an educator, I get to be a mentor, and I get to be a researcher. And I think what I like most about it is I feel like I'm in a position where I can be a catalyst to really kind of helping students achieve their goals, right? And so that involves kind of transferring expertise and teaching new knowledge, but in a process learning myself. It also kind of involves supporting students and providing guidance on career pathways and pushing the boundaries of our current state of knowledge through research. And then I'm also leading a research team that is able to kind of push the boundaries of what we know in this area of biomediated soil improvement and look at biological reactions in the subsurface and kind of generate new fundamental knowledge. And so I feel really grateful to be in this position to have the opportunity to impact student careers and to impact the trajectory of one's potentially their career and their life. And I think there's it's kind of amazing if I think back in terms of kind of what I've been able to do just in the sense of having this opportunity. And I think about all the people that impacted my career in a really positive way. And now to think that I can be that kind of person for someone else is really pretty cool. And that really kind of keeps me going and motivates me moving forward. And so obviously, it's a fantastic opportunity and I really enjoy what I do here.
Did you have a moment, and maybe it came after you started teaching, maybe it came when you were in grad school, where you realized that the tables had turned a little bit and you were a mentor for the first time? And how did that hit you?
That's a really great question. And I think, it maybe really first hit me when you have your first students graduating, right? And they're starting to prepare, for their career. And, you've been mentoring them that entire time, but it really is kind of, turning the page and seeing where they're going, seeing what, that they're interested in and, kind of helping them along in terms of, hey, the interview process or helping them make those connections or thinking about what is it like to be in academia, having those conversations, not just with them at the end, but throughout that process. And so, I think really it's, maybe it wasn't just one moment. It was kind of the whole evolution of having a student and progressing them forward. But to be that point person for them and to, be someone that they can ask those questions to, I can remember doing that with my advisor. And so it really is an awesome opportunity to be able to help someone advance their career and to get them to where they want to be. And that's not always the same for every student. It could be industry, it could be academia or something else. And so learning about them and learning about what motivates them and where they want to go and serving that role is pretty cool and definitely a different feeling than what you have when you're the mentee, for sure.
And it's lifelong, which I think is amazing. As we record this, Carl Monesmith, the legendary Berkeley professor, passed away last week. And when we made that post on LinkedIn, some of the comments that we got were from people who were, well into retirement. They're like 75 years old, and they're posting these messages about how they still considered him to be such a great mentor and everything, even at that stage of their lives. And it really is wild how that sticks with you. I know it's been the same for me too. So you got a long road ahead of you, Mike.
Definitely. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
So we have to ask some fun questions too here on Director's Cut. Not that the other ones are not fun. They're all fun, but I guess we go like this and turn it up to really fun. It is, of course, 2025. We are just a couple weeks into January, and so there is a natural question to ask you here, Mike. What's the worst New Year's resolution you've ever made?
Well, I don't really do a lot of New Year's resolutions, but I can remember one time as a kid, I think I was maybe 11 or 12, and I was really into golf, and I still am into golf. And I had purchased Tiger Woods had just written his book, How I Play Golf. And so I'm reading this book, and it's got tips on putting, chipping, all of the things that you'd expect it would have. But then it had a section on, on diet, right? And the things that he eats and the things he doesn't eat anymore at the golf course, including not eating hot dogs, hamburgers. And I said, you know what? If I want to be like Tiger Woods, I need to stick to this diet. I need to follow what he's doing. So I wrote up a plan and an idea of what I was going to eat for the upcoming year. I think maybe I got 3 days in on trying to meet this goal. I mean, it had stuff like fish and lean meats, and I was a kid. I wasn't cooking this stuff for myself. So
that's the other part. You have limited control at that point, right?
Exactly. So I had this book and a journal of like what I was going to check off, and I was going to do this every day, and I didn't follow it, and consequently, I didn't end up becoming Tiger Woods like in terms of golf. So it's maybe that's the reason. Maybe that was the tip I was missing. But I can remember that instance for sure.
So now I think as an adult, the biggest impact that New Year's resolutions had on me is that when I would go to the gym in January, it would be horrible because there'd be so many people there, and then the crowd eventually just dies down, and by like 10th, it's the same people as always. So you don't make these as an adult, it sounds like, but does anybody do this? And what's your opinion of the New Year's resolution?
I think, I think the New Year's resolution in theory is a good idea, right? It's a goal, right? And it's like new year, new goals. I'm going to try something new. And so I think, I don't make resolutions, but sometimes I do think about like, trying to set, kind of a restart, right? To kind of the year and to new goals and to be thinking about, okay, what do I want to accomplish in the upcoming year? And I don't do an official resolution, but I do think there is something in that, right? And to setting a goal for yourself, even if it is, not even at the new year, but setting a goal for yourself for the upcoming year. So I think there is value in that for sure. Yeah.
So all those people out there who set resolutions, Mike is not defaming what you do. I guess just me. I'm the only one. You can come after me if you're a big New Year's resolution fan. The third question in the interview is always the researcher practice question. You're one of these underground bug people, Mike. I do love it when biogeotechnics people come on. This is one of my favorites. One of my favorite Terzaghi lectures of all time had to be Ed Kavazanjian's from 2022 in Charlotte. That's really all I'm going to give you for a lead up. Give us what you're doing in the biogeotechnics space, what the University of Washington is doing. The people want to hear it.
Sure. Yeah. So This field of biomediated soil improvement has really taken off. And I think, kind of obviously as a PhD student and as a grad student, I was exposed to it early on working in my advisor, Jason DeYoung's lab. And so I was lucky enough to have exposure to this really multidisciplinary field, right? It involves microbiologists, geotechs, and I think that, there is a really exciting potential for new technologies in this area and as well as kind of developing the current one. So our research largely focuses on biosedimentation. So we use bacteria to precipitate calcite or calcium carbonate minerals in the soil. And we primarily do so for liquefaction mitigation. We can increase the shear stiffness and strength of the soil and increase liquefaction resistance. And so the real kind of use case for that, of course, is to provide an alternative technology to traditional ground improvement methods, which utilize largely Portland cement or mechanical energy to improve soils. You think about the impacts of that. Several years back, it was something like a $6 billion per year industry, 40,000 projects a year in ground improvement. And the production of Portland cement itself is about 8% of global emissions of carbon dioxide. So there's a huge potential there, I think, to do things in a different way. And I think that this technology affords a possibility of realizing something which is more environmentally beneficial. And so within that, there is certainly challenges, right? So there were folks, I think, early on who kind of set the groundwork really for this field. Papers like the Biological Considerations by Jim Mitchell and Carlos Santamarina, I think in 2005 was sort of the initial idea, hey, there's microbes in the ground and these are the things that they're doing. And as geotechs, we should be thinking about them. And then moving forward from that, we've really been kind of thinking about how can we leverage those things to control engineering properties. And so, as this technology of biosedimentation has advanced, there's been challenges with respect to deploying it at field. And so we've done a lot of work, both with kind of ourselves and with CBBG, which is the center, the NSF Center focused on these technologies, as well as folks at UC Davis and other institutions, and trying to deploy these things at a larger scale to try to understand things that we can't really figure out in the lab, like how do we, transport cells, or how do we get reactions to occur over meter scale distances. And so we've looked at kind of working through reactive transport modeling, field implementation on that side of things. We're also really interested in response. So we do a lot of work looking at the liquefaction behaviors of these materials. What are sort of the cyclic loading demands that would require to trigger liquefaction in these materials? What are their behaviors after triggering? So what are the consequences of liquefaction following triggering? And so a lot of work in the space of sort of elemental characterization. And I think the big challenges almost always when I mention these technologies are things that folks bring up are permanence, right? How long does this stuff actually last in the ground? And so a large focus of my group's work here has been focused on understanding how these things dissolve. Can we develop models to try to capture those behaviors? And then one bigger question is, once you know it's damaged, what does it look like after it's damaged, right? And what does it behave like? And so trying to characterize those pieces. And one big kind of consideration is the production of ammonium, right, which occurs from urea hydrolysis in some of these technologies that we work on, and coming up with methods to sort of manage these byproducts, right? They're not inherently, environmentally, toxic, except for in the higher concentrations, and those can be managed through things like, injections, which can remove them from soil surfaces and things. And so I think in all of these cases, the goal here is to come up with technologies that can achieve comparable improvement as traditional technologies, which we know work, but can have an edge in terms of environmental benefits. And I think, biosedimentation and some of these other technologies, I think just like any ground improvement technology, they have a niche where they work really well. I'm not saying that they're going to solve everything, but I think that there is other technologies that maybe we haven't fully thought about as a community that are kind of ripe for discovery, right? When you think about the billions of cells that are there, we're using maybe a fraction of those. And I think the way in which we're going to discover these new things is by having these collaborations with folks from other disciplines and to kind of connecting those dots and figuring out these new pathways and new ways of doing things. So a really exciting field, and obviously we enjoy doing work in it quite a lot.
You answered a lot of my follow-up question already, I think, because I was thinking about this as you were talking, and something that has never come to my mind is how do we sell this to somebody who's a city manager, say, or, an urban planner, somebody who's got a little bit of background in this, but isn't a hardcore engineer and might not understand the topics, right? So, I mean, what would you add to what you just said other than the obvious? I guess there's cost implications and there's the how long the stuff is going to last, which is something you brought up. What would you add to that if you were trying to sell this stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think largely, the focus on these technologies is the idea that we can realize these environmental benefits with respect to things like greenhouse gas emissions or aqueous toxicity. And I would say that, it's not necessarily a blanket technology that's going to be the best idea for every situation. I think there are site-specific situations, however, and there are tools to help us assess what those impacts are and compare different technologies. For instance, one of these tools, which has gotten a lot of work in the center, is looking at life cycle sustainability analysis and trying to understand how can we quantify impacts from different technologies for the same performance. And so we're comparing apples to apples in terms of their impacts overall. I think the unique benefit to these technologies really, though, is the elimination of Portland cement and other high mechanical energies. These are non-disruptive technologies, meaning that we inject a fluid that looks very similar to water, and we're able to potentially, in some cases, cement over large distances under existing infrastructure, which I think is another important use case for these. And so for some of these technologies, these are sort of limitations of large transport distances, of low viscosity grouts. There aren't a lot of technologies that fit the bill for that those particular traits. But I would also say that, obviously there are use cases where environmentally it makes sense and others where it doesn't. And this should always be considered when deploying any of these technologies. But I do think that their sort of niche or their potential benefit is in this space of eliminating some of these other emissions and impacts.
Oh, I like that. That's good. Solid case. Who could say no? Now, one question that I haven't asked in a long time. It's been a little variant for some people. Maybe it's what's in their car or something like that. Mike, the one you're getting here is what do you carry with you everywhere you go?
Well, I could say a lot of things, right? I could say cell phone, watch, or wedding ring, or any of those things. But I think, one thing that I do always have with me is on my keychain. I have this, and I don't know if you can see this well here, but it is a Rosetta Stone keychain
Wow.
that I got from the British Museum. And the reason why it's significant to me is my wife and I were able to travel there when I was still a grad student, actually, in 2016. We got an award for one of our papers looking at sort of deploying biocementation at sort of the field scale. And so we got to visit the Institute of Civil Engineers. And it was an awesome experience. London is such a great place to visit. That's the first time I had gone there. And luckily enough, my advisor allowed us to have a little bit of extra time. So we went to the Netherlands, we went to France, we went to England, and it was awesome. And so as part of that trip, of course, we visited the British Museum, and it was a really awesome place to go. I mean, just all the artifacts there. It's almost impossible to soak it in one visit, right? But one of the funny things that happened there is obviously we saw the Rosetta Stone, and we were in an area which had a lot of Egyptian artifacts. And I was a typical tourist. There was something in my bag that I was looking for, and I leaned up what I thought was a bench next to me. And it turned out it was an Egyptian sarcophagus. And so, needless to say, that's one thing that sticks with me. I haven't been to the country since. I wasn't a great tourist then, but I remember I mean, the history there is really amazing. It's just an awesome place to be, and super thankful to have had the opportunity to go there. It was just a great trip.
Next time you're trying to enter, the customs agent's going to kind of lower his head.
Yeah.
Are you
Are you?
sarcophagus guy?
Yeah.
That is
Well, I was
excellent. I
worried there was
like
going to
that a
be some
lot.
sort of a curse too, right? I was like, this is not
Well,
good. I should not have done that.
There's,
Yeah.
I mean, for our viewers and maybe for
Yeah.
you too, if people have not experienced the classic Disney movies from the 1960s, the Shaggy Dog and the Shaggy DA, those curses are nothing to mess with. It's not every day you get to make a Shaggy DA reference in
Yeah.
director's cut, but here we are. It's
Oh,
We talked about mentoring briefly earlier, and one of the beautiful parts about being a mentor is that you get to explain all kinds of things to impressionable minds. Mike, what geotechnical term do you have to explain most frequently? Maybe it's to your family, I guess. We could go in a lot of different directions here.
yeah, I was thinking about the audience factor as well, right? Because it kind of depends. I would say in teaching, probably the thing that I explain the most is effective stress and explaining the forces and stresses transmitted through the soil skeleton. But I would say to most lay people, or if I'm in doing outreach events or I'm talking with family, it's probably liquefaction, in the sense that we talk a lot about biocementation and what it's trying to prevent in terms of earthquake-induced liquefaction. And I think also, when you do outreach events and you talk to kids and you tell them that it's momentarily quicksand-like behavior, then you get a whole bunch of questions about, does quicksand actually exist? What happens when you step in it? Can you get out of it? Right? So I would say that, that's one of the most maybe tangible things too. Like you go to the beach and you put your feet in the sand and you fluidize it for a second and you're able to kind of show folks or family members, hey, this is what we're talking about in terms of that momentary instance of it behaving like a fluid. And so, yeah, I would say probably liquefaction is the one that comes, most frequently having to explain.
How often do you have to explain to people the difference between geology and geotechnical engineering? I think because this has got to happen to everybody, right?
Yeah, no, it happens quite a bit. And I would say that even when you talk about kind of the nuances and the differences between those two fields, to somebody that maybe that's not involved in either of them, it's still the border is a little bit fuzzy, right? So I try to say, as geotechs, we're the ones that are engineering and applying principles to these materials. We're not trying to understand them fundamentally, but rather we're trying to develop infrastructure or allow for infrastructure to be developed. And so our lens and what we're looking at here is very much in the applied sense, whereas maybe a geologist is interested in geology just because, right? And for us, we usually have an intention. There's a goal or a drive or a motivating factor there in terms of
Well
engineering.
said. We always start the back half of the interview with the same question, too. And it's an easy one. Will make you think back a little bit of nostalgia. How did you first get involved in ASCE and GI?
Yeah, so my first experience was as a graduate student. I was able to attend Geo-Congress in Atlanta, and so that was in 2014. And I remember being really intimidated to go. I was able to present there and being nervous about it, and I didn't know who was going to be there. I didn't know how to present, and so it was a good experience for me just in terms of exposure that way. And I think one of the things that was really impressionable on me was that I had no idea what a community the geotechnical field was. And so when I showed up with my advisor, I was shocked to know that he knew a ton of people, right? And that everybody was kind of like a large family, right? That everybody had connections. They either went to grad school with one another, or they had a similar advisor, or they've, worked with each other in different committees. So that was a real shock to me. In addition to, I also remember seeing some of my textbook authors present and being like, wow, this is crazy. I'm actually seeing the person that wrote the book in front of me present and talk to me. So I think it was a really great experience. And, since then, as a graduate student, I was able to kind of continue involvement in local GI events, attend other Geo-Congress conferences, and publish in ASCE journals. I think as a faculty member, it's now kind of changed the involvement to, kind of being more involved in serving as, co-chair for different technical sessions and serving on panels or giving talks at Geo-Congress. And then I serve on the Soil Properties and Modeling technical committee. And so I think it's really rewarding to be able to meet new folks in our community and to be able to have such a supportive community. I think too, as young members, I remember, as I said, being intimidated and having people there that were, cheering you on, and I realized, how supportive the community was, and in terms of especially younger folks coming up and learning how to present and learning how to go to these conferences. And so I really appreciated that. And of course, really thankful to continue my involvement with the GI, both locally and at these conferences when I can. Yeah.
So who intimidated you the most? Are you comfortable saying that now? Because I'm sure this person no longer does.
Well, I can remember. So that was the first kind of Geo-Congress that I was actually able to attend and present at. I did attend a little bit of the Oakland ASCE Geo-Congress.
Yep.
I think that was in 2012.
2012, yeah.
And I remember going to the liquefaction session. And I think the most intimidating thing was seeing Ed Idris give folks a ton of questions about different presentations and projects that they had. And so I quickly realized that I knew nothing, right? Like I don't know anything about what I thought I knew. I couldn't even follow the conversation. I was just like, I know that there is a discrepancy here and that these are touchy subjects, and I need to know more before I form an opinion. So,
but that's okay. You got to be self-aware in that scenario. I like that a lot. Oh. So one of my favorite things to do when I travel is to figure out what the best cheap food is in that city. I have the misfortune of living in a place, Washington, D.C., where we really don't have any cheap food. I don't understand how this happened, but it's not like the 99-cent pizza in New York or tacos when you go to Houston or Phoenix or whatever. We don't really have that. So, Mike, what is your all-time favorite cheap food?
My all-time favorite cheap food is carne asada fries. And I say that coming from Northern California. I really hadn't been exposed to this. I've always liked Mexican food, but I didn't get exposed until traveling to San Diego, where my wife is from. And seeing carne asada fries on the menu, I was like, what is that? And so I ordered it. She said, you got to try this. And so I did. And it was, the mixture of carne asada, the fries, the guacamole, sour cream, the hot sauce. It was awesome. It was probably one of the most delicious things I can even think of. And even right now, being here in Seattle, we have some places locally that you can get something that's close, but it's not quite the same. It has a special place in my heart. That is really a super delicious food. And it's something that I think about every time I get the chance to travel to Southern California is, oh, could I make a stop? Could I get that? And I've tried to make it here myself. It doesn't really compare. I mean, it kind of fills the gap for a little bit, and you're like, yeah, this is kind of vaguely familiar. But it's nothing close to what you get down there, and certainly not part of the Tiger Woods diet.
I like that. Nice way to bring it back full circle. Now, the logical follow-up question here, though, is there anything that is not better with some kind of carne asada on top of it? Because you can get the carne asada nachos in a lot of places. Excellent. Any kind of sandwich where you would have it on there, you could do that. There really is no going wrong, I feel like, when you are talking about carne asada.
There's no wrong way. There really isn't. You can't go wrong with carne asada. I mean, it's delicious, right? And I think the various versions it comes in terms of burritos or tacos, or even the California burrito, which is kind of like carne asada fries mixed in a tortilla, right? So it's magical, right? That's delicious stuff.
My little tip for everybody: if you want to make it at home and you don't want to have tons and tons of meat, go to H Mart. They have so many different cuts, and their fajita steak is fantastic for carne asada.
Oh, so. H Mart. That must be. We don't have an H Mart, so is that locally?
Maybe it's only East Coast
thing,
but it's a Korean grocery store. But the meat section is fantastic. They have all kinds of different stuff that you wouldn't find other places. So now next time you're out here,
that sounds awesome.
Go into H Mart and try to cook something up.
Yeah.
We can't have a Davis person on here without asking a centrifuge question. However, we're going to take things in a very different direction today. Instead of talking directly about the centrifuge, we teased this a little bit at the beginning of the show. You're going to talk about a little bit of a radioactive situation you enjoyed while you were a Davis student. What can you tell us about it?
Sure. Yeah. So while I was a master's student at Davis, I had an opportunity to be involved in a field trial project in northern Canada. And so it was something that was in collaboration with the group at Davis as well as Geo-Syntech. And it was traveling to a uranium ore processing facility in northern Saskatchewan. And so the way in which you'd get there, you fly to Denver, fly to Saskatoon, and then from there, it was a private plane about 350 miles, I think. It was a dirt road that you could see below, but 350 miles north of Saskatoon, just below, I think, the Arctic Circle there. And so I was there for a month and able to experience applying the treatment over the course of 20 days, setting up the experiment. And really, I think maybe the most interesting thing is the uranium processing facility itself, right? Getting to see what that was all about. And so the particular project that was there was focused on, they have these large open pit mines that they used to have to mine the uranium ore. And so as a consequence of that, they have a lot of loose sands that are present on the site, and they were trying to revegetate them. And so I was able to do a trial of looking at biocementation for kind of erosion control of these dunes. But at the site, it was crazy. I mean, these folks would come in, they would do week on, week off type of shifts. It was an amazing operation where you could see trucks hauling in uranium ore. It would then go to the milling facility. And when it was in the mill, you could go, and I actually made friends with someone that worked in the facility, and they gave us a tour. And there were tanks that looked bright green, just as you would expect in the movies, right? Something out of James Bond or something like that. And so it was just an amazing place to be, and to see these people there that weren't particularly worried about exposure. I mean, we all had radiation badges on, and we also had suits, right, that were kind of cleaned so that we didn't take that stuff back to camp is where we would go. But to see kind of the lifestyle of folks that work at those mining facilities, and also to see the way in which uranium can be extracted from rock using acids and a whole bunch of different circuits where they're moving it into jellies and taking it out, was really amazing. And in addition to that, the field trial project was also quite interesting in the sense that, we're remote. There's wildlife, and so there were both bear and wolves that were present. And when you're spraying popcorn seasoning on the top of the sand, right, you get a little bit, I got concerned about whether or not we'd be attracting everybody from the surrounding neighborhood there. So it was a really awesome experience to be able to, obviously, to have the opportunity to be able to do that field trial project and to work with folks that were also very resourceful. Like, we first got there, and I can remember we're setting up tanks and stuff, and we're like, oh, we don't have a fitting that we needed, right? So what do you do when you're in the middle of nowhere and you need to go get a fitting? You go to the mill processing facility and say, hey, do you guys have you have something that looks like this? And, most of the time it was no, but we have something that looks like that, and swapping those things out. So it was fun, right, to be able to think on your feet and to kind of solve problems. And one of the things that sticks with me too is that I was driving like an F-150 or something like that, and they had like a radio that would continuously play, I don't know, just songs of different types. I don't even know if it was a specific genre, but I can remember listening to about once every day a song, Running Back to Saskatoon by the Guess Who. And it was something that I just kept on thinking about, because there were days where I was like, this is tough, right? And thinking about like, oh man, if I get back to Saskatoon and I could go to that pub where we had that awesome mac and cheese, I'll be able to make it through. So it was an awesome experience. It was very impactful from that side of things.
I mean, it had to be very mentally challenging too. I'm always amazed. I think, in northern Alberta, when the tar sands became a thing, you would see these communities pop up, and people would go there to make money, obviously, and then end up there for long periods of time. And it's a challenging place to live. what was the single hardest thing for you? I mean, you went through several of them. I mean, we've talked about food a few times already in this interview. What were you eating while you were there?
Well, folks at Geosyntec will joke around with me. There was something called Turkey Tuesday, and so it was kind of like a Thanksgiving meal that we would have at the camp. And I remember Turkey Tuesday was a good day. And Brian Martinez from Geosyntec and actually Jason DeYoung, they both visited at various times. Brian to set up and Jason halfway through. And if you came on a Turkey Tuesday, that was a good day. That was the particularly delicious meal that you were going to be treated to. So yeah, they had plenty of food. They had kind of a dining commons, and you would, drive back at halfway through and get lunch, and you could have some stuff to go. I actually remember the food not being terrible, right? I think it was pretty good for where it was and everything. But certainly it was a tough lifestyle, right? You saw people that were week on, week off type of shifts, and at the end of that week, they were ready to go, right? And sometimes they lived quite a bit of ways, in BC or somewhere else. I remember a few of them, though, they would say, you're still here. Like they would go and leave the shift and they would be amazed. They're like, you didn't leave? You're still here? And I'd be like, yeah, it's just a month, but it's a month straight. And they were like, I can't believe this. I can't believe you didn't go home. Like, I don't have a home here. I got to stay the whole time.
That is amazing. Hey, you earned your toughness stripes there, I think. I like that.
Yeah, it was a good experience for sure.
We started putting fill in the blank questions in Director's Cut recently because I realized that I had never done it. Mike, you are the fortunate recipient of one of these. We have two questions left and we do this, and then we have a really obvious one to close out with. So here's your fill in the blank. Complete the sentence. I believe very strongly, maybe too strongly, that what?
Well, I feel like this question is kind of inviting a rant of some sort, and that's where I kind of took it, although I don't know if it was the right choice. I think that folks that are driving should interact in the same way that they do in person. And so what I mean by that is to say it feels like whenever someone gets behind the wheel, they feel like they're anonymous, right?
Yeah.
That they are just in a different world, right? And we have traffic here. I'm sure you have traffic there too. And, it's kind of, people don't treat each other, you wouldn't cut someone off in the coffee line. You wouldn't yell at someone for stepping in your way. So I think, everybody can be a little more patient, a little more kind as a driver. And here, one of the things that caught me by surprise, and I think many Seattleites do find it surprising is, and I don't know if you have it here, but there are cars that say, please be patient, like driver is learning or something. But you look inside and it'll be someone that looks very seasoned, right? And you're like, I'm pretty sure, well, I don't know, maybe you are, right? But I feel like that's almost like a preemptive begging for mercy, right? Like, hey, go easy on me. We're all in this together here.
And I never really know what to do with that because you think, did they put that on the car so that they could get away with stuff? Or did they put that on the car so that you wouldn't try to get away with stuff? It really could go either way.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's a huge fraction here of the cars. You'll see cars that look like they're,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Nobody's learning to drive in a $90,000 Mercedes SUV.
Yeah.
That's not in my family anyway. I like that. Yeah, you're right about inviting a rant, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a TV show, Mike.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, we got to entertain the people. What we haven't mentioned yet, and it's kind of a big thing, is that you are the winner of the 2025 Arthur Casagrande Award. I think the full name is the Casagrande Professional Development Award. This is given to someone under 35. It's one of my favorite. I mean, they're all great, right? But it's one of my favorite awards because it's so cool to see somebody up and coming, more early career, up with everybody else, getting what are more lifetime achievement awards, really. So when you got that call or email or letter, I'm not really even sure how it comes. I think it's an email. What was your reaction to winning the Casagrande Award this year?
Oh, well, first it was shock, right? I was checking my email and kind of just seeing different emails from day to day that come through, and I saw the congratulations email, and at first it just didn't even like compute, right? I was like, congratulations, how could that be? Like, this seems like an error at first. But once it kind of set in and I saw that it was the Casagrande Award, my only expression that I can say is just super grateful, right? For the people that supported me and sort of the nomination process and also throughout my whole career, both as a graduate student, but also now as a faculty member. And I think, the recognition is really for my students who have helped me here develop the group that we have and continue doing this research work, as well as our wonderful collaborators. And so, I'm super grateful for the recognition. And I think that, it's kind of shocking when I was on the website, I looked at kind of the list of Casagrande awardees and I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I'm on the same list as all of these distinguished folks. And I know also, there's lots of wonderful young faculty members across the country right now. So for me, I couldn't believe that I was the one that was selected for it, and obviously super grateful for the recognition. And I think it's kind of a testament to really the wonderful people that I've been able to work with, both students and faculty members. And, my research and teaching journey obviously is just getting started, and it's been really fun and looking forward to the road ahead. And certainly this gives me a little bit of extra pep in my step. It's a really nice recognition and really cool. So thanks so much to everybody that made that possible.
I like that you opened the email, because one of my favorite stories that came out on Director's Cut is Tom O'Rourke got the letter from the National Academies, the National Academy of Engineering, that he'd been elected, and he said he was busy that day and set it aside and forgot about it. And I believe I would have to go back and watch it again. And for everybody out there, you really should. It's a good story. I believe they called him several days later to make sure everything was okay and that he was going to be willing to accept this honor. So, Mike, good job opening the email. Apparently, that is like one of the most important steps in receiving a valuable award. So you made it through all 10 questions. You will, of course, be receiving the Casagrande Award in Louisville, and people should come to Geotechnical Frontiers to see that and all the other great stuff that we have going on there. For you, for your case today, you did a great job answering everything. We found out so much. Carne asada fries is probably the highlight for me, talking about that. And then, we went all kinds of fun places, though. For our viewers, if you liked what you saw and you're here at the end, so you probably did, you should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will, of course, let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Mike, thanks again for doing this. I hope it was a good time.
It was great. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
So what a way to kick off season 6 of Director's Cut. Of course, we will be back with another brand new episode next week. Want to go with it?
I think what I was going to say is, just talk a little bit about kind of my most impactful memories about being a Davis, or a story, kind of where I was going to take it is we did a field project at a uranium mine. And so it was a really kind of something that stuck with me the whole time, radioactive or
and
not.
And you still have children.
Yeah, exactly. Well, only one, so we'll see. But
that was that was my tagline. I did. It's funny. This just came up the other day because my daughter just had to do her science fair presentation yesterday, and so we were talking about what we did when we were in school. And I did a project with Fiestaware one year, and it had there was uranium in the paint to make it all the different colors. Yeah. And so I led off my presentation with something like, if you want to have children when you're an adult, don't eat off of this. And then everybody was just sucked in immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, that was definitely a concern, but I was young too, so it was you don't worry about that stuff as much. And there were generations of people that had worked there, so I figured it was okay, right?
That's always amazing to me, though,
Yeah.
when people use that as like a justification, because I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh, this isn't that dangerous because
Yeah.
everybody else has made it out okay, but you don't want to be that one guy.
No, you don't.
So what do you